Ladies and gentlemen, y'all told me last week that you really enjoyed these quarterback and tight end videos, so we're going to make sure we get you a new one, especially because we know it is so damn important to get every small detail of your starting lineup correct this week because it's win or go home. I mean, it is probably the most important week of the year, if we're going to be honest, getting these starting lineups correct. And before we get into anything, make sure you go down there, drop a like on this video, leave a comment with any questions you have. And if you want to get in a draft with us, I'm sure you've seen us doing them on the live stream as of late. If you want to get in a draft in the public lobby, if you want to go check out any of these player props, you can find the link to Underdog Fantasy in the description of this video in the comment section. When you sign up for Underdog and use promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to 100. So make sure you're taking advantage of that. And I think that should be about it. Let's dive into these tight end rankings first, and we'll go QB rankings afterwards. Tier 1, Travis Kelce, there's nothing to talk about. Okay, Travis Kelce in his own tier. Nobody comes close. You should have drafted him in the first round this year. Let's go down to Tier 2. I don't know if I'm making a massive mistake. I probably am. Is it obnoxious for me to still have Mark Andrews at 2? I know it is probably laughably bad. If you look at points per game so far this season, Andrews is at 2. It sounds weird because obviously it's been so disappointing over the past month. But at the end of the day, after Travis Kelce, all of these tight ends are so close that I think you can kind of go one way or another with this ranking. We're going to have Hockenson at 3 here. If you wanted to move Hockenson over Andrews, I'm not going to fault you whatsoever. Obviously, we don't even know who the quarterback's going to be for Mark Andrews this week. With TJ Hockenson in a game going up against the Indianapolis Colts, they are 4-point favorites. The Minnesota Vikings have been able to effectively move the ball down the field through the air. I mean, Cousins actually had a pretty damn good week this past week, losing to the Detroit Lions, but the passing volumes there held Justin Jefferson at over 200 receiving yards. The difference between Hockenson, Andrews, and then some of these other tight ends that we're going to be looking at is Andrews is the only guy in his offense. Literally the only guy, where obviously in Minnesota, they can go a couple different ways. But dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go Dallas Goedert at 4. Of course, you're going to have to monitor the injury report with Dallas Goedert. I'm assuming that he is going to be good to go. Going up against the Chicago Bears, right now you have the Philadelphia Eagles as 9-point favorites traveling to Chicago. And what did we say in the wide receiver video? What did we say in the running back video? You need every Philadelphia Eagle you can put in your starting lineup in your lineup. Looking at how damn good this offense is, I mean, right now, I think it's a safe projection where Dallas Goedert may end up being 3rd in targets behind A.J. Brown as well as Devonta Smith. Still, as a very solid play at a position where it's hard to find touchdown upside nowadays, but you have that touchdown upside if you're in this good of an offense. But now going down to 5, we are going to have Evan Ingram coming off of possibly the best tight end week of the year from someone not named Travis Kelce. But the reason we are not going to have him higher than 5, the reason why we are not going to have him above someone like Mark Andrews is if we take a step back, I mean, Evan Ingram does make it look like this past week was an outlier. And on top of this, regarding the matchup, the Dallas Cowboys have a phenomenal defense. It doesn't matter if you're going to be looking at, I mean, the running back position, the tight end position, the wide receiver position. I think in general, we should be trying to avoid this Dallas defense when we can. What's interesting is this game opened up with the Dallas Cowboys as 5-point favorites over the Jacksonville Jaguars. That line's fallen to 4, so it looks like sharp money went in there and bet on Jacksonville, where Lawrence has been pretty damn good. I mean, kind of feels weird that we seem like we're disrespecting Ingram coming off a monstrous week when we have him as a top 5 guy. And then at 6, we're going to go David Njoku. With Njoku going up against the Baltimore Ravens, we'd assume that maybe they throw the ball a little bit more than we're used to. We're going to be talking about Deshaun Watson at the very end of this bad boy. Deshaun Watson, however, hasn't been great his first 2 weeks in. I mean, for some best ball leagues that we have, I'm kind of hoping that Deshaun Watson can take a massive step forward and elevate this entire offense over the next 3. But still, Njoku's been dominant regardless of if it's been Brissett or Watson. All you need him to be is healthy. Now our last guy in this tier will be Pat Freiermuth. With Freiermuth, the snaps have actually trended down a little bit. I don't love the offensive environment either. You're going up against Carolina. You're 2.5-point dogs. Like, I think we should be worried regarding Trubisky. Kenny Pickett, whoever the starting quarterback here is probably not going to be great. Obviously, you have Deontay Johnson. You have George Pickens. getting a decent amount of targets here. At least Deontay is. So for I think you could have him as high as 4. Obviously, all these tight ends are very close. Now, at 8, we are going to have Greg Dulcich with a lot of uncertainty. We don't know if Russell Wilson's going to be playing. We don't know if Courtland Sutton's going to be playing. The optimal for Greg Dulcich here is you have Russ playing and you have Courtland Sutton out. And in a great matchup against the Arizona Cardinals, if those two things happen, I may move him up these rankings if I'm going to be honest. But it's a little harder to commit to that right now, and we just don't know what the situation is going to look like. So we'll have him at the top of this tier at 8. And then at 9, we are going to be going with Dalton Schultz. Schultz, I think what ended up happening a year ago is he maybe just ran a little lucky with touchdowns. And obviously a year ago, you had injuries to guys like Michael Gallup. I don't know what the difference is between Dalton Schultz last year, this year. Maybe it's just the overall passing volume of this offense is severely down when they can run the ball effectively. But Schultz clearly hasn't been the tight end that you drafted him to be. Now we're going to go Darren Waller at 10. Darren Waller sounds like he's going to be back. I'm going to be very hesitant to play him coming off an injury where he wasn't good beforehand. Like the difference between Dallas Goedert coming off the IR and Darren Waller coming off the IR is Goddard was phenomenal before he got injured. Darren Waller was barely startable. It's also a very tough matchup going up against the New England Patriots here. I mean, with the Patriots, this is a team that struggled in general, but from a defensive standpoint, pretty damn good. Right now, the line on this game's about 1 point. Now, our next guy will be Tyler Conklin. I like the matchup against Detroit. I mean, there should be a higher scoring contest between the Detroit Lions and the New York Jets. Conklin has had target volume. I'm not a big time believer in Mike White, but you like the matchup and you like the volume. And then at 12, we are going to be going with Cole Kmet. I don't like the fact you're playing the Philadelphia Eagles here. I mean, I think top to bottom, Philly, I mean, it's not a hot take to say this, but as one of the most well-rounded rosters in the NFL, I think that we should be trying to play as many of those guys that we can in their offense and avoid playing as many guys as possible going up against their defense. But now going over to the quarterbacks, we are going to have Jalen Hurts, tier 1 against the Chicago Bears, sitting at 1. With Jalen Hurts, 1 week he's going to go out there. He's going to throw for 300 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns. The next week, maybe that drops to 150 passing yards and only 2 passing touchdowns. But if that happened, you knew he ran for 100 rushing yards. So it doesn't matter how Jalen Hurts gets there. He's either going to get there with the rushing or the passing, probably a combination of both things. It's a fine matchup going up against the Chicago Bears. Maybe this is similar to what we saw with them a few weeks back when the Green Bay Packers couldn't stop the run and they go out there and they run the ball for 40 points. Now we're going to go with Patrick Mahomes at 2. With Mahomes going up against the Houston Texans, like your initial reaction would be like, okay, well, they're going to boat race Houston. The spread on this game's 14 points. You don't really want to start Patrick Mahomes because they're going to be able to run the ball over and over and over again in the second half. And I understand that sentiment. I understand why a lot of people would be excited about Isaiah Pacheco for that reason and maybe be a little bit off. And I repeat, just a little bit off of Patrick Mahomes here. I'm not going to overthink it. I mean, with the Kansas City Chiefs, even when they have that large league, they are going out there and throwing the ball in the second half. Like, it is very funny. Go back and look at what you had against the Los Angeles Rams a few weeks back when the Chiefs were 17.5 point favorites in that game. Look how many pass attempts they had. Now, going over to our third quarterback in this tier, we're going to have Josh Allen against Miami. Allen has the rushing upside, the Mahomes doesn't, but still, I don't know. I feel like we're getting a little more consistent play with Patrick Mahomes. Right now, the Bills are actually, I believe, 7.5 point favorites over the Miami Dolphins. This is going to be a game that you want to monitor. This is being played in Buffalo. So obviously, December game in Buffalo, you better be checking in on the weather if you can. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to be going with Justin Herbert at 4. I mean, it seems wild that just a month ago, people were worried about Justin Herbert, and we are having to say, pump the brakes. He hasn't been that great this year, but he's had no Mike Williams. He's had no Keenan Allen. What the hell do you expect from the man when his number 1 wide receiver is Joshua Palmer and his number 2 guy is DeAndre Carter? This past week, when we finally have both Mike Williams and Keenan Allen back in this offense, Justin Herbert looks like that elite level quarterback. He looks like the guy you drafted him to be. Going up against the Tennessee Titans, I mean, a week ago, what did we have? We had the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence dominating this Tennessee Titans defense. Right now, the spread on this game's 3 points favoring the Chargers. But going over to our next guy, we're going to have Joe Burrow at 5. With Burrow, maybe you can move him down a spot depending on the health of T. Higgins as well as the health of Tyler Boyd. Obviously, that's going to be something to monitor. But at this point, I mean, I think Burrow with the small addition in the rushing game he's actually been giving you, has a ceiling that he wasn't accessing last year and has an incredibly high floor as well. You don't love the matchup against Tampa. Obviously, Tampa's a pretty damn good run defense. Maybe they just throw the ball. Look at what Brock Purdy just did. Now going over to 6, we're going to have Justin Fields. Justin Fields has more rushing upside than any other quarterback in fantasy right now. But the issue is you're going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. You're a 9-point dog. Justin Fields has had 2 games this year with over 200 passing yards. So I don't love the matchup for Justin Fields. Obviously, based off of his rushing upside, we have to give him his respect. We have to put him as that mid quarterback 1. I don't know if there are going to be that many people who can afford to bench Justin Fields. However, I mean, if you're sitting there with Fields and Herbert on your team, you probably should have traded one of them a few weeks back. But now going down to our next tier, very difficult to rank 7 through 12. I mean, I honestly had a very easy time ranking 1 through 6. 7, we decided to go with Dak Prescott. I actually kind of like that this is supposed to be a little bit of a closer game for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Dak did not look great against the Houston Texans, and a game that was very close last week. But going up against Jacksonville, if the spread is 4 points, if this is a competitive contest, maybe the Dallas Cowboys aren't going to be able to just lean on their defense and run the ball over and over and over again in the second half. Maybe you actually have Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys having to draw back, having to throw the ball occasionally. So Dak obviously hasn't been as good as he's been in years past from a fantasy football perspective. I think that a big portion of that reason, however, has just been the game environment he's been used to. Now going over to 8, we are going to have Tua Tagovailoa, and here with Tua, I want to rank him higher. With all my eggs being in the Jalen Waddle basket, I would love to say Tua is a top 5 quarterback, blah, 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 but it is difficult knowing that this is being played in Buffalo. You're a 7.5-point dog. You don't have the rushing upside. So if we're relying on passing volume, you're in a tough matchup in a game that possibly may have some weather concerns. That'll be something we have to monitor closer to the weekend. It's going to be difficult for me to try to fool myself into ignoring the past few weeks and rank you as the top 5 guy. Obviously, Tua did not look good in primetime going up against the Los Angeles Chargers this past week. I don't know. I'm really hoping that Tua outperforms this, specifically for all the leagues we have Jalen Waddle in. But now going down to our next guy, we're going to have Kirk Cousins. With Kirk Cousins, he's been playing in some shootouts. The Minnesota Vikings defense has been horrendous over the past month. It's been making Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings rack up these passing attempts. Obviously, the issue with Cousins is the fact that you don't have any rushing upside and you're purely relying on just the passing volume of the offense. But at 10, we are going to be going with Trevor Lawrence, someone who's been significantly better than this over the past month outside of the game that you had against the Detroit Lions. With Trevor Lawrence, I feel like maybe we're disrespecting him a bit with this ranking, having him down here. But in reality, all these quarterbacks in this tier are kind of up to you with how you determine to rank them. I think you could make an argument that Lawrence should be all the way up at 7. You cannot get him into the top 6. However, if you have like Fields and Lawrence, you play Fields. If you have Burrow and Lawrence, you play Burrow. If you wanted to make an argument for Lawrence over Dak, I'm not going to fault you for it. The reason I'm going to put Lawrence at the bottom of this tier is strictly just because this Dallas Cowboys defense, I think it is going to be a much better defensive unit than what Lawrence has seen over the past few weeks. Now going over to our next guy, we're going to have Jared Goff at 11. Tougher matchup for Jared Goff than he's used to. I mean, last week he was favored by 2.5 points over Minnesota. This week, it's essentially a pick'em game between the New York Jets and Detroit Lions. You don't love the matchup going up against the Jets. The Jets do have a great defense. It is what it is. Goff, very similar to Kirk Cousins. You're betting on the passing volume in an offense that has been pretty damn productive and getting into shootouts as of late, or pretty much the entire season. Now, our last guy, do we just put Deshaun Watson here? I'll put Watson here, and I'll reiterate what we said last week. You don't want to start Deshaun Watson until we see Deshaun Watson perform. Until we see Deshaun Watson go out there and give you that top 5, top 10 quarterback finish any week, you don't want to have him in your starting lineup. This game's being played in Cleveland. They are 3-point favorites. The Ravens have struggled against defending the pass in some contests this year. It's a tougher spot to be in. I'd love to know if you think we should have a different quarterback here like Mike White going up against the Detroit Lions. But I think that's all we got for you. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, please go down there, drop a like on it. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section. And if you want to get into a draft with us on the live stream, a draft in the public lobby, if you want to check out any of these player props, that's all on Underdog Fantasy. You can find the link in the comment section, find the link in the description. When you sign up for Underdog with promo code FLOCK, they're going to match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to 100. So it's pretty much free to check out and available in damn near every state. But thank you again. I appreciate you. I hope you have a great day and hope we get to see you in the live stream tonight.